The controversy around Donald Trump's statement regarding Greenland is heating up and is fresh from the oven for a new debate. What is this all about? Why is Donald Trump asserting that the United States has a solid claim to the island? Where did this all begin? Let's get a little deeper into it. Greenland, in the first glance, a solitary outpost of the planet, at the edge of the Arctic and the Atlantic, seems kilometer upon kilometer away from any part of the world. But its history is intricately entwined with North America, from the Vikings to World War II, to Donald Trump's impossibly ambitious attempt to buy it. Thousands of years before it became a focal point of world politics, Greenland was settled by ancient gatherers and hunters. However, it wasn't until around 982 AD that Europeans, the Vikings, first settled there. A Norwegian explorer called Eric the Red had been exiled for a violent crime from Iceland and voyaged into these waters. Noticing a large island with productive coastlines, he chose a grand name for this land, Greenland, to lure in new settlers. But one of them went one further. Between 1000 and 1020, his son Leif Erikson traveled even farther into the Atlantic, finally landing him in America, 500 years before Columbus. The Vikings settled in what is now Newfoundland, Canada, but relations with the native peoples soured. A decade or so later, they left Vinland behind. But the Greenland Vikings lingered on for some centuries. However, in a span of a few years in the 15th century, they vanished, probably just when the climate started to pull back into a cooling episode with fights against the actual owners of Greenland, the Inuit. Denmark officially resumed control over Greenland in 1721. The first contact between the USA and Greenland was scientific. Elisha Kent Kane directed the Second Grinnell Expedition between 1853 and 1855, which surveyed the northern regions of Greenland, at the time part of no man's land inhabited by Inuit. Other expeditions were later used to survey the North Pole. Denmark only established its colonial presence on the western coast of Greenland from 1721, while North and East Greenland was still no man's land. The colony of Angmagsalak was created in 1894 at Tasiilaq on the east coast, long before Thule was founded around 1909. When, at the beginning of the 20th century, it was found that Greenland was indeed an island, Denmark sought international recognition of its sovereignty over the whole of Greenland. In the negotiations for the sale of the Danish West Indies to the USA in 1916 and 1917, the USA recognized Danish sovereignty over Greenland. But international recognition took longer and was not secured until 1933. For a long time, the island affected but little world politics until the 20th century. When Germany occupied Denmark during World War II, Greenland ended up in a rather awkward position. It had no more ties with the Danish government and sought protection, which was given by the United States. From the very beginning, it was clear to the United States that Greenland was of great strategic value. They built military bases on the island, supplied it with goods, and assured anyone that it would not fall into enemy hands. The American presence continued in peacetime after the war. Denmark signed a treaty in 1951 allowing construction of the large Thule Air Base, now the centerpiece of American missile defense. But by that time, America was already preparing for its future. Long before, during the Cold War in 1946, President Harry Truman had made an offer to Denmark to buy Greenland for $100 million. The Danish government politely turned it down. More than 70 years later, Donald Trump, a new president of the USA, would stir these issues. In 2019, following a report that Trump had discussed the purchase of Greenland with advisors, many suspected at first that it was a prank, but it was no joke. He explained, "Greenland is incredibly important for the USA in strategic terms." He was right. America, Russia, and China have been investing heavily in the Arctic, an increasingly important geopolitical region of tension, and the island is economically valuable for its natural wealth, including rare earths, oil, and gas. But the Danish government protested vigorously. Denmark's prime minister at the time, Mette Frederiksen, stated archly, "Greenland is not for sale." Trump got offended. He canceled the state trip to Denmark and labeled Frederiksen as disrespectful. Even though nothing was sold, Trump's swagger signaled an increasing stature of Greenland for America. Washington had pulled up its socks as never before. It had stepped up its diplomatic activities, opened a consulate in Nuuk, and invested in local companies, preventing at least some of the Chinese presence. And indeed, huge natural resources could stand to be found on the island, including its immense reserves of rare earths that are important to modern technology and the transition to renewable energies. Moreover, glaciers are melting because of climate change, which opens new ways to do business and trade. This is not just attracting investors, but is also calling upon scientists who are making stunning discoveries about the consequences of global warming in Greenland. Although Greenland is part of Denmark today, in a large part it enjoys independence. Many Greenlanders hope for long-term independence. At the same time, there is a huge economic dependence on Denmark. Donald Trump has returned to power, and he appears to be unashamed about that fact. He has gone ahead to point out to Denmark directly about his offer to buy Greenland, and has even stated he wants it. Of course, these claims lead to hot discussions about the matter, and the Chinese too have long been eager for Greenland's treasures and mean to gain an economic foothold. Greenland is a tale of explorers, wars, and political intrigue. But one thought to abide in all minds is that the world's largest island happens to be under intense discussion these days, and not only will it be of tremendous importance to global politics, but perhaps it might decide its own fate one day.